Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2234. The topic is mindset, and the title is I Tried This and It Failed. I was talking recently with a fellow trainer, and we were kind of talking back and forth about the crazy things that clients do, but then how we actually have done them ourselves. So we had met at a gym, and they were telling me just some things that they were struggling with. We were joking and laughing a little bit, but then as they were kind of complaining, I said, essentially they were complaining, and I wanted to get rid of the negative tone because I wanted to keep a good day. So I said, isn't it wild that, we went through those same stages? It's crazy to think that we have done all of the stuff that our clients do. We've just done it ahead of them. And that made them, kind of like realize, oh crap, I'm complaining about stuff that I did as well. So they calmed down a bit. And then we were just kind of sharing stories and laughing a little bit. I remember telling them something that is very prevalent that still happens all the time, that drives me like crazy because I don't understand how, but is fasted workouts. People get up in the morning and they'll be active, they'll do a lot of exercise, a lot of activity before they ever eat. And that is just an atrocious way to treat your body. There's a lot of negative outcomes. So I remember whenever that was touted as being, the next best thing for fat loss, is you get up and you do, a certain amount of cardio. It was 20 minutes of cardio fasted. Then it turned into somehow we were doing like an hour on the step mill. So it's always one of those things like if more is good, more is better kind of thing. So we were just adding more and more to it. So it became, hour on a step mill, or whenever I was really pressured when I was teaching at the university, I had a lot of 8 a.m. classes. But once the classes started, I had to then go into other stuff throughout the day. So it was better for me to work out before class. So I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning. I would try to train from 6 to 7:30, take a quick shower, whatever, and start teaching class at 8. So I would work out in the morning, and at that time it was, fasted cardio, fasted workouts was all the rage. So I was trying it, and I realized, holy crap, I feel awful. I have no energy. My strength progress is damn near nothing. My muscle growth doesn't seem to be happening at all. I have just horrible energy throughout the day, so I'm using more caffeine, which is then messing up my sleep quality, which is then giving me even less energy. Then also you notice, okay, at the same amount of calories I was doing before, somehow I feel softer and pudgier, and I just don't look as good, even though I haven't increased my calories. I'm not eating more. I'm not getting fat for that reason. I'm eating the exact same number of calories, but somehow I feel fatter. I feel more deflated. I feel squishy. None of the good feelings, nothing that we'd want to see or feel when we're working out on a regular basis. So it was interesting is at that time, I decided to try fasted workouts, even though I thought it was stupid. I was like, well, maybe I'm the idiot. So if people are saying this is a good thing, at least let's give it a shot and let's try it. So I tried it for a while, realized I wasn't wrong. Everything I thought was dumb about it turned out to be dumb. I also had read a book called Nutrient Timing by John Ivey, which was an amazing book, loved it. So along with the experiential education, I was also getting the formal education by reading the book. Now, I have a master's in nutrition, but in nowhere in a master's of nutrition program do they teach you about aesthetic nutrition. They teach you general health nutrition, how to control like blood markers and general health. There's one 3-credit class in an entire program about sport performance, and there's zero education about aesthetic nutrition. So having a master's in nutrition is excellent for understanding the science, like the biological response that we have to foods, but it taught you absolutely nothing about body fat control, body fat versus muscle tissue and how you balance those two, whether you're trying to build muscle but not build fat, or lose fat but not lose muscle. I ended up actually having two of my teachers as clients before I graduated because I knew a lot about aesthetic nutrition. I started doing this when I was 15. I started training people when I was 16. So by the time I was in grad school, I had a lot of years of in the trenches type education. So I had teachers who they weren't necessarily overweight, but they were soft and didn't like the way they looked. They didn't like the way they were performing in the gym or out on runs. And they knew a little bit about my background. They knew I was training other students. I was training at the facility. So they're like, hey, do you think you'd help? And I was like, yeah. So I look at their food and I'm like, whoa. I was like, we need to change this. So here are professors teaching registered dietitians, but they don't know aesthetic nutrition because it wasn't taught to them, and the current curriculum wasn't teaching it to my fellow students. So I've worked with dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of registered dietitians as clients because they were never taught aesthetic nutrition. They had borderline any education on sport performance, and usually sport performance is only taught in relation to aerobic sports, not anaerobic sports like heavy lifting and things. So it was wild to me to see the missing component of the formal education aspect. So I went out and sought reading books and peer-reviewed studies and research articles and all this stuff as much as I could. And that book, Nutrient Timing by John Ivey, was one of many books, but it was a really good book if you want to read it, about some of the formal science aspects of timing your food better in relation to when your body's active and you're trying to create performance, create body adaptations such as building muscle tissue, increasing strength. So it was interesting to have that as an example of something that I tried. Even though I knew it was, probably not going to go well, I still tried it anyhow. And what was interesting is the trainer and I, as we kept talking about these experiences, something stood out to me in our language. We kept saying oh man, I tried that and it failed. Oh, I tried this and it failed. So if you notice the title, I tried this and it failed. Never did the other trainer and I say, I failed. There was a clear distinction in our mind between it, meaning like what we tried to do, like the method, the application, the concept, that failed. But we didn't fail. We were able to separate the us from the it. And if I were to fail something, what I would associate the failure to be is on my effort. The consistency, the quality, the level of my effort. So failure to me, failure to the other trainer, was based on effort, not based on outcome. And that is something I see so prevalent among the people who I work with who are the most successful. Whether it's success in a physical endeavor or they're just successful in business, they're successful in other aspects of life, and I'm getting to work with them in the physical health realm. The most successful people I work with, there's a clear distinction between effort and outcome. They can always control their effort, but they can't always control or predict what the outcome will be. And often in business, especially, is you have to try stuff and not have a freaking clue what the outcome is going to be. In the physical realm, you can have a much better predictive, parameters and having a better idea of, okay, my body's probably going to respond in this way. It's probably going to end up happening in like this. And maybe the timeline, it ends up happening sooner or slower or to a greater degree or lesser degree. But typically the direction you thought things were going to go, they do go that way. Whereas in other aspects of life, you might think it's going to go right and it veers to the left. It goes up and it goes down. You can't always predict the outcome. But what I would associate as failure is my effort, not the outcome. What was also neat was we saw everything as a opportunity, like an opportunity. It was, okay, I tried this, that didn't work. So based on what I learned from that, I then tried this. So our focus was heavily on what did we learn from the experience? And it was disassociated from our personal value. So my self-confidence isn't shaken because I tried fasted workouts and it didn't work out well. That's not my problem. That's because that theory was stupid. I tried it, and you could say that was stupid, but I also don't want to be the person who just dismisses everything based on my current knowledge, because then I'm only ever going to stay at my current knowledge. You have to be willing to test your knowledge. You have to be willing to say, I don't know how that's going to go, but I want to find out. I want to grow. And the only way to grow is to risk that what you know now might be wrong. You have to be willing to be wrong to continue to be right long-term over time. So these are interesting lessons from that conversation that I thought would apply well to a mindset podcast, is learning to disassociate the outcome from our own personal values and like our value as a human. For example, when I talk with people and they're a new client, they'll sometimes say things like, diets just don't work for me, or my body doesn't respond to diets, or my body just can't ever seem to build muscle. They tend to personally associate the outcomes of previous efforts, like previous strategies, previous concepts, and they internalize it. So maybe they tried low-carb diets and they're like, my body just doesn't respond well to high fats. That's one way of saying it, is there could be truth to that. Maybe their body doesn't respond well to like high-fat diets. Or maybe there was just something in the way they structured it. Maybe it was incorrect parameters. Or maybe that didn't work well for them because they didn't like any of those foods, so they weren't consistent with it, and they ended up actually under-eating. They under-ate so much they got intense cravings, and then they solved the cravings with carbs because they freaking hated the fat-based foods. So they would then say, my body doesn't work, like my body doesn't respond to diets. It's like, no, we just have to set the parameter of the diet that better matches your needs, and then all of a sudden that diet would work. So a diet strategy you may have tried didn't work, but it doesn't mean like your body's broken and it doesn't respond to the concept of diets. So it sounds even funny to say it that way, but people often do believe that. They'll say, my body just can't ever, I can never get stronger no matter what I do. I'm just, never going to reach my goals. And it's like, well, maybe what you've tried so far hasn't worked. We just have to continue to try other things. But I doubt your body is, unresponsive to normal physiological adaptations. So if there's a training method that has worked in the past for someone before, chances are we can apply that to you, learn something from it. Might we have a best outcome possible? Maybe, maybe not. But are we going to learn something from applying it? Probably, hopefully. If we pay attention to enough data, if we are consistent enough in the effort that we truly actually applied the method, then yes, we're going to learn something. We can then take what we learned, twist it, modify it, and try something a little bit different. But that is the big takeaway, is the separation, essentially, of effort versus outcome. And the separation from the words I failed versus it failed. Just because an outcome didn't happen the way you expected, it doesn't mean you are a failure. That method, that model, that concept, that whatever it was, that approach, if it didn't work, then it failed. Now, if you didn't put in maximal effort, if you didn't actually adhere to it, and you didn't follow it correctly, then yes, you failed. So we need to find out why. Why didn't we follow it? Did we just not believe in it? Did it not match our lifestyle? What was it about it? How do we increase our adherence the next time we try another approach? So we do want to be aware that we can fail things, but we fail them based on effort, not based on outcome. So I loved that in the conversation with the trainer that those two things stood out, was it failed versus I failed. And everything we tried, we laughed that if it didn't work, we're like, oh man, that was dumb. That didn't work. So then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. The conversation was always progressive. The conversation was always, I tried this, then this, then this, then this. And keeping that separation from it failed versus I failed. Keeping the separation that we can control effort, but not necessarily outcome. Keeping that separation allowed us to keep moving, keep progressing, keep trying things. Because we didn't see ourselves as predetermined failures. So no matter what we tried, it would fail. It was just that thing failed, so I learned this. So I brought that knowledge now to the next thing, and then maybe this thing will work out better. If you find yourself feeling defeated, beat down, if you're struggling to try the next thing, it could be because you are inappropriately associating failure to yourself. Just because an outcome didn't happen the right way, or the way you predicted, or the way you hoped and dreamed it would, it doesn't mean you're a failure. So we can control our effort. That's what we should focus on. The outcome, we hope it's going to work out well, and we do want to see what we get for our effort. But no matter what the outcome is, that's not a determinant of us as a person. That doesn't determine your value. So if it failed, not you. I would encourage you to pay attention to the way in which you speak to yourself and the way in which you view previous experiences. Do you view them for what you've learned, and now you're trying to apply that knowledge to the next thing? Or if the previous experiences have felt like leaving you feel defeated, maybe we need to have more of an awareness to separate our effort versus our outcome. Awesome. If you can keep that distinction, you can keep putting in future effort long enough that you might actually find the next approach that works for what you want, and you can finally reach the outcome you're looking for. So hopefully these words help. If you have any questions, if you need anything, just shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. You can also check out our services and more about myself and my wife Meredith at our website, www.brutalirongym.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people we can help. If you like the podcast, you can consider donating. You can donate to directly on the website, or you can actually buy your supplements from Nutricost.com. That's where I buy mine. You can use the code BrutalIron10 for a 10% discount. And whatever you spend, we get a 10% commission. So that's a great way for you to get great supplements at a great discount and give back to the podcast. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.